Hey everyone, welcome to my hip mobility flow based on the functional range conditioning system developed by Andreo Spina. The idea is to work towards the end ranges of the joints using the connective tissue and central nervous system to maximize mobility. While I'm not a provider of functional range conditioning at this time, follow me through this segment of transitioning between various hip mobility moves as I give you some general tips and cues. If you have tight hips, you might want to grab a balance pad or a few yoga blocks to place under your sit bones, knees, and hips in the various positions. Not all of the moves are appropriate, so I'll try to mention some possible modifications. However, be sure to check out the links provided for more information. You'll also notice that I'm wearing wrist weights that are 1.5 pounds. They aren't necessary, but if you're interested, I've also provided that link. Start with your feet parallel, wider than your shoulders, heels directly behind the second toe, and any hip support that you might need directly below your sit bones. I've started this flow just by flexing at the hips and bending over, lifting my sit bones up towards the ceiling, interlacing my fingers and lifting them up and overhead just to get a nice little shoulder stretch before we start. Put your fingertips on the floor, lengthen the spine and take a nice deep inhale into the side of the ribs, and then exhale. We're gonna lower the sit bones all the way down to the floor without actually touching the floor. So you're holding yourself up in this deep hip and knee squat. I'm using my upper arms to help guide my knees out so that they're not falling onto the inside of the big toe. However, you should be using your connective tissue to help sustain this position. We're gonna interject a little thoracic rotation here by drawing one shoulder down towards the floor slightly and using that upper arm to press the thigh as you reach the opposite arm up towards the ceiling. Try to lengthen the spine as you inhale and exhale here. Unwind and return back to your bear squat, and I've interlaced my fingers to create that tension needed in your core. However, feel free to also reach both arms forward and just make a fist. Now the fun begins. Start by internally rotating your right hip knee towards the floor. This is where the balance pad under the sit bones really helps. And using the strength in your hip flexors, extend the opposite leg as high up as you can, but staying in a neutral spine with the sit bones driving into the floor. Now you can lean back, but just don't round the spine. Extend it out as far as you can to the side, getting ready to go into a straddle. Externally rotate that internally rotated knee up towards the ceiling, and then extend that leg out to the opposite side of the straddle. Center the hips and drive both sit bones straight down, get nice and tall through the spine. And we're gonna go to the other side by internally rotating that left knee in, lifting the right leg straight up. Remember, you can lean back, but we wanna stay in a neutral spine as much as possible. Then flex that knee and bring that heel to your sit bone as much as you possibly can, and this is the hardest part. Stay in this position and squat up. Return to your bear squat by opening that left knee back out. Continue pressing that left thigh out all the way into a side lunge and opening both thighs. Here we're going to find out how much strength we have in this range of motion by pressing through the right leg, hips up and over, to transfer the side lunge to the other leg. Take a moment here to open the hips, draw the sit bones down and enjoy that stretch for a second. And we're gonna lift up one more time and get back into our original bear squat. And now we're ready to repeat all of that to the other side. So let's drop that right shoulder towards the floor, lengthen those sit bones down, press the thigh with that upper arm and reach the other arm up towards the ceiling, lengthening the spine as you take an inhale here and exhale, unrotate, come back to your bear sit, extend your arms or interlace your fingers, and we're going to start with that internal rotation of the left hip, left knee towards the floor, stay in neutral as you extend that right leg straight up. Press it out to your straddle as you place it down, then externally rotate your left thigh, knee to the ceiling, and press it up and out to the opposite end of the straddle. Take a moment here to enjoy lengthening the spine in your straddle, driving your sit bones down. And then we're gonna rotate to the other side by internally rotating that right hip, right knee towards the center of the body, down towards the floor. Both hips center to the left thigh as you lift that leg straight up towards the ceiling and bending the knee, bringing the heel as close as you can to the sit bone. And then the fun part, try to stay in this position as you down through the legs and come off your sit bones. Externally rotate that right thigh out to the side lunge. Press down through the left leg to lift up and over to the other side, lengthening that left inner thigh. And one more time, up and over, back to the left, lengthening the right inner thigh. Slide it back in, right back into your bear sit. That was the end of round 1. Round 2 starts out the same, internally rotating that right hip, knee in and down towards the floor. Drive the sit bones down as you lift and extend that left leg straight up towards the ceiling, and put it down by externally rotating that left knee out to the side, going into your 90-degree position. Knee lined up with the hip, heel lined up with the knee. Reach the sit bones back as you lean forward, bringing the chest over that front knee. We're going to continue rotating the upper body over towards that left side, and we're going to internally rotate that back leg. Lift the heel straight up towards the ceiling as much as possible. These always give me a little bit of a hip glute cramp. Inhale as you press it back down to the floor. Exhale, lift it up. Inhale, we'll put it down. Come back to your seated position with the sit bones driving straight down towards the floor. Then lean the chest over the front thigh one more time and see if you can extend that right leg out and back behind you into a pigeon stretch. I don't quite make it, so I'm gonna wiggle my thigh all the way in so that the knee is lined up directly behind my right hip and my right heel is directly lined up with my knee. Take your hands behind you. I like to press them into my sacrum to encourage lifting up and out of my sacrum as you lean the chest over only as far as you can sustain a neutral spine, no rounding of the spine. When you get to the end of your range, whatever that is, put your hands down before collapsing and press yourself back up. Here is where maybe using a yoga block under that front knee might be necessary. Now, I only demonstrated a couple of these, but if you want to continue working on this, feel free to press pause and we can pick it back up when you're done. To get out of this position, we're going to try to reverse the same pattern. So internally lifting that back leg up, internally rotate that left leg. It's just gonna go to parallel. We're gonna lift it straight up, flex the knee and tuck that heel as close as you can to your sit bone. That fun little squat off of the sit bones and back into your bear sit. Goody, side 1 done. Now on for the other side. Internally rotate that left thigh, knee in and down. Drive the sit bones and extend that right leg straight up. Externally rotate and open it up to its 90 position. Knee lined up with the front hip, heel lined up with the knee. Turn both hips to face forward, drive the sit bones down, and then continue rotating to the right and internally rotate that back leg. And we're going to try to lift it up, extend it, and drive it behind you. Still can't make it on this side, so I'm going to wiggle it so that my back thigh is lined up with my hip and my foot is lined up with my knee. Hands at the sacrum, leaning the chest up and over the front thigh, down to the end range. Put your hands down before you collapse and press it back up. Lift up out of the sacrum, lengthen the spine as you lean over that front leg, and then put the hands back down and press it back up. I'm demonstrating a third one here because my hips are so tight on this side. But again, if you want to continue working on this movement, feel free to press pause and pick it back up. Reversing the pattern to get up and out of here, internally rotate that back leg and bring it to its 90-degree position with the knee straight out from the hip. Internally rotate that front leg, knee up to the ceiling. Flex the knee and tuck that heel as far up towards your sit bone as you can. And the fun part, getting back up into the squat, lifting the sit bones off the floor and back to your bear squat. We're back in that mini straddle position that we started this whole thing in, and we're going to turn both hips to face your not as stretchy front leg split. Back hip is rotated all the way forward so that your front of your hips are level. Again, using the yoga blocks under your hand and the balance pads under your hips if you need to. And try to get that back leg completely lined up behind that hip, as well as the front leg lined up with the front hip. Once you're settled as much as you possibly can, we're going to get to the other front leg split by rotating through our middle split. So you're going to externally rotate that back leg into your middle split, pressing the thighs back and open as much as possible so you're not sliding the legs forward out of your split. Continue externally rotating that leg and internally rotating that back leg until you're in your front leg splits on the other side. Now, if you don't quite make it, again, a little bit of wiggling and manipulating might be needed here. If you're using blocks, you might want to bring those blocks with you in your hands so that as you get to the other side, you can kind of wiggle back into as much of a square front splits as possible. And we're going to just repeat this process from one front leg splits to the other side. Not so pretty watching it or getting it done, but very effective for working that rotation in the hips, especially if you already have the splits and are looking to increase the mobility in those ranges. And that's your hip mobility flow. Be sure to check in for additional flows incorporating mobility moves like this. Thanks for watching.